It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as Adam Cole has a high-level meeting with Vince McMahon, and WWE have released 13 more wrestlers from the company. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first, NWA have crowned a brand new World Television Champion, and the new holder is a name many may be surprised by. The main event of last night's episode of NWA Extra Power saw Tyrus, who is the former Brodus Clay in WWE, defeat the Pope Elijah Burke. The title was reintroduced in January 2020, and Tyrus is now the 4th champion since the rebirth, with AEW's Ricky Starks, Zicky Dice, and the aforementioned Elijah Burke holding it before him. This ends the Pope's 291-day reign with the belt after he won it in October last year. Outside of a Battle Royal loss, Tyrus is undefeated in NWA after 8 singles matches, and he did have a shot at the TV title in April before drawing with the Pope on an episode of Power, and now he's managed to win the belt at the second time of asking. On last night's episode of WWE SmackDown, Seth Rollins cut a promo responding to Edge's challenge for a match at SummerSlam later this month. Beforehand, Edge had told Seth that he's trying to walk in his footsteps, but he can't fill them, before calling him Edge Light. This remark angered Rollins, who told Edge that he's had enough and said, "I'm not a light version of you, I am better than you in every single way, and you know it." This line sounds awfully familiar and led to a response from AEW's MJF. As we know, MJF's catchphrase is "I'm better than you and you know it," and Friedman took to Twitter to point this out and said, "Add a word so it's not plagiarism." The tweet was quickly deleted, and there has been no public response from Rollins. But that aside, the match between Seth Rollins and Edge is now official, with the Edge Light comment being enough to make him accept the challenge. The two will clash at SummerSlam later this month. As we discussed in a video yesterday, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer reported Adam Cole had been offered a contract by All Elite Wrestling. Cole's WWE deal expired in July before he was offered a short-term extension to see him through to SummerSlam weekend, with his last contracted match currently set to be at NXT TakeOver 36. Meltzer has now retracted his claim that AEW are in talks with Cole, taking to Twitter yesterday to say, "Tony Khan said it is incorrect, and he has not made an offer to Adam Cole." This tweet was posted after the Wrestling Observer newsletter was published, and it could be a case of Meltzer covering for his friend as to not implicate him for contract tampering, or it could well be true. But either way, only time will tell where Cole ends up. And in regards to Adam Cole and WWE, last night the former NXT champion had what was described as a high-level meeting with Vince McMahon after being invited to SmackDown. Cole was not present on the show itself, but was backstage for talks. This could imply that WWE may offer Cole a spot on the main roster in order to get him to re-sign. Cole has been stuck in NXT ever since he signed with WWE back in 2017, and as I mentioned in a recent video, a spot on the main roster could be what is needed in order to keep him away from AEW. Cole has hit the ceiling in NXT, and if a significant spot is offered to him on Raw or SmackDown, it could be enough to tempt him to stick around. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you scroll down and drop a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head towards 20,000 subscribers. But now that you've done that, let's get on with the rest of the video. And finally, WWE have continued their mass releases, as last night they let 13 more names go from the company. This was during an episode of SmackDown. This follows several rounds of cuts starting in April 2020, which are still continuing to this day. We're going to run through the list of names on the August 6th releases, which consists of talent ranging from performance center trainees with no matches to former champions. First on the list of names is Steven Smith, and Smith has been with WWE since early 2020, working as a referee for the NXT brand. Although he's never wrestled in the company, he does have 11 years of in-ring experience under his belt on the independent circuit. Next up is Zachariah Smith, who is a 7-foot, 300-pound collegiate basketball player out of the University of Oklahoma, as well as the Washington Generals, who were the rivals of the Harlem Globetrotters. Smith was a trainee at the Performance Center and has never appeared on NXT or WWE television. Desmond Troy is next on the list, who signed for WWE in 2018, making 9 on-screen appearances for the main roster and NXT. His most recent appearance was in the NXT Breakout Tournament, losing to Joe Gacy in a qualifying match, and most notably worked matches with Seth Rollins, Sheamus, and Bobby Lashley on the main roster in April 2020. R.I. Sterling was next, who is known on the independent scene as Alex Zane, where he worked for the likes of New Japan, GCW, and Ring of Honor. He was signed to the Performance Center in December 2020 and was a regular feature of the Cruiserweight division on 205 Live from May through to July, with his most recent loss being in an NXT Cruiserweight Championship match, where he lost to Kushida on last night's pre-taped episode of 205 Live. Kona Reeve was also released, ending his 7-year run with WWE after being signed by the company in May of 2014. He has struggled to find a regular spot on NXT television, despite vignettes airing in April 2018 hyping up his return. He has made appearances for NXT UK and Evolve since signing, and was a regular at NXT live events. His last match was in February last year, losing to Keith Lee on NXT. Next is the first former champion on the list, as Leon Ruff, the former NXT North American champion, has now departed WWE. He was signed in 2020 after working as enhancement talent in 2019, and went on to have feuds with Johnny Gargano and Isaiah Swerve Scott. The former Evolve Tag Team Champion has made his final appearance for WWE on last night's pre-taped episode of 205 Live, where he defeated Grayson Waller. Asher Hale has also been let go, who was signed recently in January 2021. He made his television debut losing to Cameron Grimes on the May 4th episode of NXT, before becoming a regular on the 205 Live brand up until his release, where he made his final appearance on last week's show. He will likely return to the independent scene, where he is known by his real name, Anthony Henry. Next is Giant Zangier, who is a former basketball player and trainee of the Great Khali. Billed at 7'2", he made his WWE debut at the recent Superstar Spectacle, which was a show taped in the Thunderdome for the Indian market. Zangier was one of many Indian talents featured on the show, teaming with Dilsher Shaney, Rey Mysterio, and Ricochet to defeat Cesaro, Dolph Ziggler, King Corbin, and Shinsuke Nakamura. This was his first and only match for WWE. Jake Atlas was next, who has been with WWE since October 2019. He made his NXT television debut on April 1st, 2020, losing to Dexter Lumis. He then took part in that year's NXT Cruiserweight title tournament, and would make regular appearances on NXT and 205 Live. His last appearance was in a mixed tag match, teaming with Mercedes Martinez in a loss to Boa and Xia Li on June 29th. His release came exactly 5 years after making his wrestling debut. Next is Tyler Rust, who was signed to WWE in December 2020 and was a member of the recently debuted Diamond Mine faction alongside Roderick Strong, Hideki Suzuki, and Malcolm Bivens. The faction debuted on June 22nd after several vignettes, and he made his last appearance on the July 20th episode of NXT, teaming with Diamond Mine leader Roderick Strong in a losing effort against Bobby Fish and Kushida. And speaking of Bobby Fish, he was also let go from WWE after signing for the company in June 2017. He is mostly known for his role in the Undisputed Era alongside Adam Cole and his longtime tag team partner Kyle O'Reilly, with Roderick Strong later joining the group. The faction would end up becoming 2-time tag team champions, defending it under Freebird rules. Fish has been a wrestler since 2002, most notably for Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro-Wrestling, regularly teaming with O'Reilly as part of the Re-Dragon tag team. They have long been considered one of the best tag teams on the planet. Mercedes Martinez is next on the list, who was officially signed by WWE in January 2020 following appearances in the first two Mae Young Classics. She was part of the 2020 Women's Royal Rumble before a brief run as part of the Retribution stable, then telling management that she wanted no part of it. She returned to NXT as part of the Robert Stone brand and made her final singles appearance at NXT TakeOver In Your House, losing to Xia Li. Mercedes is a well-traveled veteran, having worked for Shimmer, WSU, WXW, and even AEW right before she was signed by WWE. The final name on the list is Bronson Reed, who has been with the company since January 2019. He made his NXT debut in June later that year and eventually went on to become NXT North American Champion in May 2021, defeating Johnny Gargano in a cage match. His reign lasted 42 days before dropping the belt to Isaiah Swerve Scott. He was tipped for a call-up to the main roster, having worked a dark match on SmackDown before making an appearance on the main event C show, but his last match was on July 21st, losing to Adam Cole on NXT. This news means that since April 2020, over 100 wrestlers have been cut from WWE. These cuts have continued the rumors that WWE are preparing for a sale, releasing talent to improve their profit margin to maximize the sale price the McMahons can receive. We'll have to wait and see if any more releases are to follow, and I get the feeling they're not quite done yet. But we'll keep you updated on the channel should any further news break. And before you go, why not check out my video where I discuss 5 ways that AEW could book the debut of CM Punk.